Hello, my name is Jaune and welcome to my channel. So, just a few days ago, Rooster Teeth released the trailer for RWBY Fairy Tales, coming out at the end of the month. To be honest, I'm not a big fan of this animation style, but with Volume 9 not coming out until 2022, I am craving RWBY content, so I'll take what I can get. Now, given this show is coming out very soon, I decided, hey, let's do a little breakdown and analysis here to see if we can find anything neat. I will say that while I haven't read the Fairy Tales of Remnant book, I do know pretty much all of their general plots, so there's probably going to be spoilers for them, as well as possible spoilers for the show, since I'm going to be doing some speculating. So, if you want to avoid that, here's your chance to go before I get started. Alright, let's hop into it. So, the first few establishing shots are not overly important in regard to showing major details. Firstly, they confirm 4 of the fairy tales that are being adapted, those being The Grim Child, The Girl in the Tower, The Hunter's Children, and The Indecisive King. These shots do also show a couple of interesting details, though. The first being the symbol on the Hunter's table, which I'll cover in the last section of this video because, spoiler alert, it shows up again. And then the second is this image of the king and queen, presumably at the end of their episode. This, I think, can show us a stylistic aspect the show is gonna have, probably starting each episode on what looks like a page from a storybook, then transitioning into a more traditional animation, before finally going back to the storybook aesthetic at the end. We also may see a few different kinds of storybook aesthetics given the next couple of shots, which shows presumably Salem's father's castle in a very pop-up book fashion. They even have this strip of cardboard, which I think is just really funny, personally. Speaking of these shots, there are a couple of things I found intriguing in them. The first being that we see in this one frame the ruins of Salem's father's castle, before the transition which implies the narrative is going back in time to when the castle was whole. The castle is also colored in an interesting way, being green with orange highlights, which is traditionally Oscar's color scheme, and just generally gives a very Emerald City vibe to it. It almost makes me wonder if this castle, which is definitely Salem's original one based on the design, is somehow conflated with the castle she shared with Ozma, based on said color scheme and the fact that the castle was brought to ruin as seen in the Lost Fable. Next, we see our first in-color look at an animated relic of choice. And it definitely is more in line design-wise with the other relics we've seen, compared to the image we got in the book at least. It's not exact though. The color is more of a bronze than a gold, I think. But that could have just been a choice to differentiate from the gold rings the king is wearing. We see images confirming we're also getting a Shallow Sea adaptation, and whoo boy, the God of Animals is kinda low-key terrifying, not gonna lie. But, also kind of low-key awesome. We see Ozma looking cool as always, and the king going through his relic of choice vision. I tried to see if I could discern anything from the color flashing during this part, but I couldn't find anything in particular. I also tried to see if there were any familiar symbols in the tapestry, but again, I got nothing. So if you guys do see anything, let me know in the comments. Next we see a Grim attack, presumably from the Hunter's Children, and the letters Salem sent out asking for help. Also, just an army of those magic armor things Oz had to fight in the Lost Fable, which is really, really cool. We see some dead people, the usual, and then we get something very interesting. During this section that's focused on the girl in the tower, it sounds like it's Salem narrating it, using a voice similar to the one she had when Ozma first saved her. And this actually makes a lot of sense, since, canonically, Salem wrote that fairy tale to gain sympathy. It does make me curious as to what the narration is going to be like in the show. Presumably, Ozpin is going to narrate most of it, but it'd be pretty cool to see other characters narrate as well, like maybe having Blake narrate a Faunus creation myth, for instance. Now, also in this section, we see something that could have some pretty serious implications going forward. That being the Ark family symbol on Salem's banner. Now, I know this was believed by some people to be the case in the Lost Fable as well, but to me, the similarity was extremely iffy. This, on the other hand, is super explicit. And there were several explanations as to why this could be the case, which I'll try to go over quickly right now. Before I do that, though, I do want to remind you guys that these fairy tales and the designs in them are not canon. This is the symbol Salem had in the castle, not necessarily this. Okay, so what are the explanations for this? The first possibility is that it's nothing. That the animators remembered this was a thing people were talking about in Volume 6 and decided to troll the fandom. And while that's hilarious and something I think could be the case, I don't think it actually is. The second option is that it's exactly what it leads people to believe, that Jaune is in some way Salem's descendant. And that's a possibility. There's a fair enough family resemblance, although to be fair, pretty much all blondes on Remnant look pretty similar, and it would explain Tyrion's interest in Jaune. I kinda doubt this though, cause I feel like it would have been addressed when Salem and Jaune met in Volume 8. It's still possible, but it would make it kind of weird it wasn't brought up then. Also, I've seen some people suggest that Jaune is descended from someone related to Salem, but no, that's not possible. Everyone from that era was destroyed long before Jaune's family existed. It's Salem or nobody in this instance. The third option is, because this is how people imagine this symbol on Remnant, Jaune's family decided to model their own emblem after it, trying to connect themselves to this ancient royal line, which would make sense if the theory about Jaune being related to the King of Vale is true. Psst, I talk about why that may or may not be the case in another video. Click the card or the link in the description. Or, as a kind of reverse to this idea, it could be Salem acting like she is an ancestor to the Ark family in order to try and gain their sympathy in particular. Jaune does say he comes from a line of warriors and heroes after all. Maybe Salem needed their help for something. And the final option, the one I think is actually true, is that it's not as literal as people might take it. The thing about fairy tales is that while they can be very explicit, that explicitness can be used to subtly deliver a message. And looking at the image from that lens, I think this very explicit banner is trying to remind us of the similarities between Jaune and Salem, which were much more apparent in volumes 4 to 6. Because yeah, I don't know if you guys remember, but there were some pretty clear parallels back then between Jaune and Pyrrha and Salem and Oz. A noble and kind soul who worked tirelessly to help defend the world, finding love and wanting to be with them, only to be ripped away too young. Also, they were disintegrated. Their loved one, in response to this, becomes angry and resentful to those they view as responsible. They lash out and act rashly, not caring for their own lives, and end up endangering others because of it. They're even both shown standing in front of a statue of their lost loves in Volume 6. The difference is that Jaune had his friends and a certain red-haired woman to help him gain closure. Jaune is, essentially, a Salem that decided to keep moving forward. Now, as for why they're drawing our eye back to this comparison, well, that's a theory for another day. Next up, we see more images from the Grim Child, and I think we hear Miles doing some voiceover here, so he's most likely going to be playing that poor fella there. We see another bit from the Hunter's Children, then we get a clip that confirms we're also getting Judgment of the Faunus, a couple more clips of the Hunter's Children, then we have a shot of the actual storybook these seem to be coming from. Showing the sketch of Salem we saw earlier is in the back of that book, a few scribbled out images of Beowulfs are throughout, and a full Beowulf is on the first page. Then we see the cover, and oh, would you look at that? It's the same design that was on the Hunter's table. So let's talk about what this is. The design itself, obviously, looks like a tree. And as such, with Volume 9 on the horizon, I've seen people suggest it looks like the tree on the island. While this isn't necessarily wrong, I think there's a much more clear comparison that makes the symbol more than just a tree. I think it's a religious symbol. The tree and the roots underneath are representative of the two brother gods and their realms. I mean, just look at the thing. The top of the image looks to be a stylized tree, like the god of light had in his pool, even having the hanging wind chimes, which look like the hanging bits on the symbol. But the most important part is that this tree is stylized to look like the god of light's antlers. Looking at it like this, the roots are clearly depictions of the god of darkness's horns, with the other bits potentially being jagged rocks we see in the pools of destruction. Now, as for what that would mean for the story, I'm not really sure. But I'm fairly confident this is what the symbol is alluding to, and I'm looking forward to see if there's an important reason it's on this book of fairy tales. And that brings us to the end of the trailer. So far, we have 6 fairy tales that are confirmed to be adapted by this trailer, and if you want my thoughts on which could have the most potential implications for Volume 9 and the show going forward, my money is on the Shallow Sea, and maybe, just maybe, the Girl in the Tower. But hey, those are just my thoughts. What do you think? Agree? Disagree? Think this show can't come out soon enough? Let me know in the comments down below. And, subscribe. I'm trying to do a video every week or two, so you might find something you like. Till next time, safe journeys, my friends.